Hello and welcome back to another episode of Only a Bag. The guide to Italian travel is no longer our name. It's Only a Bag, an Italian travel podcast. I'm Nathaniel Mellor, and I never make any mistakes.
And I'm Darcy Melton. And thanks everybody for listening.
Thank you all for listening. Today we're going to talk about the 3 T's of Italy traveling. And it's 3 T's that we made up mere moments before we started recording.
Yes, they're all important things, but they start with T, and so we thought they should go together for a trifecta.
Yes, it's instead of 3 mini episodes, you're getting 1 normal length episode, and they are in a very specific order that we just came up with, again, mere moments ago.
Tap water, tipping in toilets.
So this is going to be a lot of fun.
I'm excited.
I'm excited. And thank you all so much for listening to our podcast. We do appreciate it, even when we talk about toilets, tipping, and tap water. We genuinely appreciate all of you listening. And if you'd like to continue listening, you can follow along. You can also leave us a review if you want other people to find the podcast. And we also want to say thank you to everyone who has left a review. We just passed 25 reviews, I believe, between Apple Podcasts and Spotify. So we're very excited. It seems like a fun milestone of like, woo, we got some fun reviews. And thank you again. So yeah, genuinely, just thank you everyone who's been listening. It's just been, I think our last episode was on travel tips, and that had about 200 plays in the first week, which for us is quite a lot. We usually get like maybe 80 to 120. So this was in the first week. So this has just been phenomenal. So thank you all so much for listening.
Thank you so much.
And if you'd like to follow us elsewhere, we have a Blue Sky, Only a Bag on Blue Sky. We also have a website, onlyabag.com, where Darcy and I are working hard to upload fun articles that are essentially boiled down versions of some of the podcast episodes. And some of them aren't even related to podcast episodes. They're just information you might want when you're traveling. Mm-hmm. And last but not least, we do have an email if you'd like to send us anything on our email, onlybagpodcast@gmail.com. So without further ado, let us jump right in to tap water.
Tippy tap over to tap water.
Tippy tap over to tap water. Love that.
So, big question. Is tap water safe to drink in Italy?
That is not a rhetorical question. You were looking for an answer.
Yes.
It is safe to drink in Italy. There's a fun pause there as we both tried to figure out what was going on.
I did not tell Nathaniel that's how I was going to start this segment.
Well, Darcy, yes, it is drinkable in Italy. Thank you for asking.
You're very welcome. So a big question that I think, tons of people ask this, like it is a highly searched question on search engines of your choice, is the tap water safe to drink in Italy? And I know for you kind of came up with the number, like people over 45 tend to ask this question, although that's lots of people ask, but there was just information in the, I guess, pre-2000s that the tap water was unsafe in Italy and in other parts of Europe as well.
In most of Europe, yeah. Mm-hmm. And I think, especially Italy, I know that both of my parents, uncles, family friends who are, again, over age of 45, I'm using that as like a rough number, but essentially it's like if you were traveling in the late 90s, early 2000s, it was something, and before then for sure, but it was a piece of information passed around quite liberally, which was that don't trust the tap water. It's not always potable. It's not always drinkable. Sometimes it doesn't taste very good, blah, 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 blah. And by and large, I would say, I would feel safe in saying that by and large, that was true to a certain extent. In fact, when we looked it up around that time that we'd first heard other people telling us, we looked it up and realized or discovered or found out that one of the reasons that Italy has such a big like water home delivery sort of institution or program is because of people not having access to drinking water at home. So, I say that because where we are in this little valley, there used to be 5 or 6 different places that would bottle and deliver water to your home. At least 2 of them bottled them, locally from springs that were local and then delivered them to your home. They would make, I believe, just basically flat water, sparkling water, and then most of them made a couple types of soda, like a Kinotto or a limonata or something like that as well as like one of their offerings. So it used to be really common that you'd get water as well as soda delivered to the house in glass bottles that they then pick up and then refill.
Super cool. I want that.
And it's still a thing. There are still a lot of companies that do it even where we are. It's not the most economical anymore, unfortunately, but it's great because I think a lot of people like you really like the sparkling water instead of flat. I love
bubbly water.
And the only other option, unfortunately, is buying plastic bottles and that aren't, they're not reusable, they're recyclable technically, but also
Yeah, but it's plastic. It's not good.
So and which is all to say that I think there was definitely a time where tap water was not drinkable. So it does, as you've found, as we both found, it leads, I think, to a lot of questions about the, am I going to get sick when I drink the water here?
Mm-hmm. But now the tap water in Italy is completely potable, very safe everywhere in Italy. In fact, everywhere in the EU, the water is absolutely safe to drink. In hotels, you can drink it straight out of the tap. It's obviously totally safe coming out of the shower for your body. And if you're staying at an Airbnb or if you're renting a place here, the tap water is safe.
And actually, if I may add on to that, we mentioned about hotels, that's a big one because sometimes a hotel will have a mini bar, but then no other access to bottled water, and your hotel might not be near a corner store or a grocery store, or your Airbnb might not be either. You might not know where one is around. So I think you and I both felt after getting off a long flight or after just being exhausted, the last thing we want to do is start walking around a neighborhood, sometimes hunting for a place to buy a bottle of water, especially when it's late at night. Sometimes when we arrive here or leave here, sometimes, whatever it is, it's usually late at night. So it can be really difficult, I think, to find water. So it is good to know that the tap water from a fountain, not fountain, what am I talking about? The tap, just the tap, would you call it the tap?
Yeah, sink.
The sink is completely drinkable. But also I wanted to throw in that airports, by and large, will have potable water, which is weird for me because every time we fly, it's like when I leave from Rome, all the bathrooms have this is potable water. You can drink from it, or they'll have.
Oh, I thought they said it was non-potable.
Oh, the ones that in the men's bathroom have a little drinking sign.
Oh, okay. I don't remember.
Well, now I'm wondering if they don't. But when you look it up, it does say, at least the airport website says it's potable, plus they have water bottle refilling stations around.
Mm-hmm. I always use the water bottle refilling station.
Yeah, because you're, put together. It's like a proper human being, not scooping handfuls of water out of the men's bathroom like me. But no, that is all to say is sometimes I think even during a layover or something like that, it can be difficult to know, what basically is potable and what's not.
Mm-hmm. Well, I have to say though that to my recollection, every airport we've been in Europe has a sign saying if the water is potable or non-potable. It is clearly marked. And I think every airport we've been in Europe, unless it was a tiny one, which wasn't even in the EU, I'm thinking of North Macedonia, they didn't have a water bottle filling station, I think. Mm-hmm. But all of the airports in the EU do have a water fountain with a water bottle filling station.
Which is really nice.
Yes.
If I may add on to that, though, I do want to say, we're talking about the non-potable, potable. Typically, I would say, running the risk of being wrong, but typically a fountain or a sink will not say if it's potable water. It will only say it would say acqua non potabile.
Yes.
Water not potable, basically. And I say that because I think it gives me the impression that
the default is that it is potable, and it will say if it's non-potable.
Exactly.
Yeah, you're
and
right.
It's important to know that one of the places I want to talk about was Rome. We've talked about this 1,000 times in the Rome episodes. If you have not heard those, you're more than welcome to do so. We'll probably revisit them this summer as people go for the, not the Carnivale, the Jubilee. And one thing, though, is pretty much all of the fountains, both the Nazzone, which are those little cast iron fountains that stick up about 3 feet from the ground and have constantly running water, but a lot of the decorative fountains are drinkable water. Like the Trevi fountain, for example, is not. The fountain at the steps of the Spanish Steps, the base of the Spanish Steps, is part of it is drinkable. Mm-hmm. Part of it is not. It's a little confusing. There's 2 spouts of drinking water. The rest is not. I think the fountains in the Piazza San Popolo are not drinkable, but there's fountains on the edge that are. It's a little weird as well. But there's fountains attached to the obelisk that are not drinkable, and They have signs. And that is all to say, there will usually be a sign that says this is not drinkable. Sometimes, I will say, the sign is quite small. It's a small brass plate that was put there in the 60s and has not moved. And that might be your only warning. But non potabile, and it looks like it's spelled like potable, but there's an extra I in there. But this is all to say is, by and large, if you are thirsty, you are safe to drink from pretty much any tap anywhere.
I do want to note, though, not on trains.
Yes. Oh, yes.
I don't know if a bus would have a sink, but not on...
But not on that either.
Yes. Transportation has I'm guessing it's a gray water tank is what they use, but that is not potable. And it will say, like on the train, it's written not.
And I think
non-potable.
multiple languages do not drink.
Yeah.
And one last thing on tap water. This is probably our shortest segment, but one last thing on tap water is tap water at restaurants.
Yes. So that's not a thing. I think if you press the waiter or waitress person, they will bring you tap water, but that's not really a thing in Italy. And I'm gonna say all of Europe really, but certainly not a thing in Italy. Typically, you will buy a bottle of water for the table.
Yes. It gets a little weird though. I will say some restaurants, you can buy sparkling water, which is like they'll bring a bottle of water that like from a company, and we can buy a bottle of still water. And sometimes it's just suspiciously in a glass carafe, and you're like, this is tap water. You are charging me for tap water.
Usually it'll be
But usually
sealed.
it's in a sealed bottle.
Yeah.
I think we've been to a couple nicer restaurants, and it's like, oh, this is just a carafe of tap water. And the last note I think on tap water that I had, and then I will stop talking about tap water, I promise, is at a cafe.
Yes. So that, I think we've talked about this so many times, but in the South, typically, so let's say Rome and farther south than that, Rome is not in the South, but anyways, Rome and to the south of Rome, you'll typically get a small glass of water with your coffee. North of Rome, the glasses of water become smaller and smaller until they finally disappear.
Yes.
For instance, in Venice and the region up there in the north, you typically will not get any water with your coffee. I actually saw an Instagram video, which I can't decide if it was rage bait or not. It certainly was rage bait for me, was sort of making fun of Italians saying, oh, Italians don't drink water because this is the water you get when you ask for water at a coffee shop. And clearly it was making fun of a sort of cafe in the north where essentially this person was given like a thimble full of water. Yes, you get less water at a cafe in the north.
You get like a shot glass of water in the north. It's ridiculous.
And you can ask for, it is ridiculous. You can ask for more. That's fine. But Italians drink water like normal people.
Yeah.
They consume a lot of water, and in fact, a lot of bottled fizzy water. That's huge here. But that video made me enraged because it made it seem like Italians don't drink water.
Interestingly enough, though, too, I think this is, of course, for all drinking water, which includes cooking, hygiene, and drinking. But Italians consume the most drinking water out of any European country or any European people, which is fascinating, including, I believe, they consume more water per person than Americans do. Mm-hmm. I think it's somewhere at 242 liters a person a day. And again, that does include hygiene and cooking. And you and I were joking that like it's probably because of all the pasta, and it's probably because of all the, I mean, I think part of it too is like I think washing machine water counts as this, and showers and baths. Mm-hmm. And I don't know for fact, but I'm willing to bet a lot of that is watering a garden. Yes. Even though, because I think a lot of house hookups won't have a differentiate. Like a lot of houses don't have like, oh, that's like the water I can't drink, like except like maybe toilet water, but you don't. That's not a differentiator, I think, in Italy. So a lot of times people water their garden if it's attached to their house with potable water. Mm-hmm. But I think land maybe is different.
I think it depends. I have to say that where we live, we are in the country and in the South. A lot of people have small farms, and I do think that they probably should be using what's classified as like agricultural water, mm-hmm. and some of them do, but I'm willing to bet that some of those people with small farms do use what's considered tap and potable water.
Yes.
So I'm guessing that some of that tons of water goes to water crops and also to be drinking water for animals as well.
And interesting, just again, because we're throwing out statistics for y'all, and I know how much you're like, Nathaniel, please tell us more statistics. I love it. I'm hoping. I thought it was fascinating too, because some guy, he's from, I want to say Liechtenstein.
Okay.
Luxembourg. And he was talking about how for the price of a bottle of water, you can get thousands of liters of water from the tap. And I'm like, there's no way. Because just to give an example, a 1.5 liter bottle of water in where we are costs about 35 cents.
At the grocery store,
At the grocery store. So you can get a 6-pack of 1.5 liter water. Again, I am terrible at math, but if you give me a second here, that's 9 liters of water you can get for about, it's usually like €2 and change. Mm-hmm. It's because sometimes it's a discount on the on the total purchase. So even sometimes if it's like 50 cents a bottle individually, they'll give it to you for a bit of a discount, like €2 for the 6-pack kind of thing, which is all to say, I'm like, there's no way you can get thousands of liters of water. But in Naples and Campania, for an example, it is a €29 for 1,000 liters of tap water to your home or to your business or whatever it is, which is quite cheap. So you can see how people are using it to like water, like just, I mean, they've got taps going all the time for something.
I read something that I don't want to go into too much because I don't know that much about it, but I know that Italy has some of the, if not the cheapest tap water in all of the EU.
I saw that as well.
And I know that part of it is because of government subsidies. And I don't want to say too much about it because I don't know, but I do think that is part of the reason that tap water is less expensive here than in nearby countries like France. However, like you were saying off mic, there are regions of Italy where tap water is inexpensive just because it's very accessible. They just have a lot of, fresh spring water.
Yeah. And I think even here, like our water comes from a very quite local well in terms of, I mean, it's a local well for the entire region, but like, or reservoir, underground reservoir for the region. It's also weird too, because I know that if you've been reading the news, dear listeners, then you might have seen that Agrigento in southern Sicily, it's like southeast Sicily, give or take, has been having a lot of groundwater / tap water issue, like potable water issues. And that is something to be aware of if you are going to southern Italy at any point in the next 50 years, 100 years, give or take. It's a lot. It looks like it's slowly undergoing desertification. A lot of these lakes and underwater, groundwater sort of reservoir. Why I keep saying underwater reservoir? Groundwater reservoirs that have been there for hundreds or thousands of years, that have been written about thousands of years ago, are now disappearing, and they're not being replenished by melting snow. They're not being replenished by rainfall. They're not really getting rainfall either. So it's become kind of an issue. I know that last summer it was big news because a lot of the people in Agrigento specifically were having to get water like trucked in, but they were all like, this is not we can't continue to live here unless we either build pipes to a place that has water. But if all of Sicily is slowly losing their water, then there's not really much to do. So it's something to keep in mind. The other thing, I think it's the last thought I had, and I don't know if you had more thoughts on tap water in Italy, but in case it makes a difference to you, and I just thought it was a piece of interesting information, but Europe, unlike America and a lot of other countries, never had a fluoridation program for their water.
Right.
So I think all of Europe, apart from Ireland and some parts of Spain, have unfluoridated water, which I just found interesting because I was doing some sort of research for someone and for some article, and it was basically like, oh, it is, which it was looking at a balance thing. I was like, America fluoridates their water. Is there what other Western countries do, which other Western countries don't? And I thought it was fascinating because none of Europe does, basically. Mm-hmm. So in case that's food for thought for you.
That's interesting.
Yeah. And I think that's everything. Or
I
no?
do have one other thing.
Please.
So we were talking off mic about Capri. So
yeah.
Capri has pipes that bring in fresh drinking water from Naples. They go underneath the sea, which freaks me out when I think about swimming because I don't like man-made things in the ocean. And it was last year that you said that they had an issue.
In the summer, I think.
One of the pipes had an issue.
I think they had to shut off one of the pipes for just for the day, but it was big news for that day because it was obviously like height of tourism season. So they had multiple thousands of people on the island that don't live there. Some of them were staying, some of them were just for the day trip, but they had to ask everyone, please, please, please do not take showers. Do not try to limit the amount of water you consume right now because they had one of two pipes working, and that is not, even in the best of times though, they do have some water consumption issues, which makes sense. It's a small island that they have two pipes to pretty much, it's like, to help with pretty much double the population of Capri. But if they get 10 times the population of Capri in the summer, then it's like, well, we don't have pipes for that. Mm-hmm. And I actually, on that note though, just as a small kind of aside or last thought on tap water, which honestly, this turned out to be much longer than I thought it would, is that sometimes some small, almost everywhere in, as you mentioned, in Europe, in the EU specifically, has drinkable tap water. Sometimes like small islands in Greece, sometimes potentially small islands in Italy, it might be not non-potable, but might not be potable everywhere type thing. And I also know that in really rural places, like even where we live, totally potable from the tap. But there are a lot of fountains around, in which case it'll have a little sign that also says non-potable. Mm-hmm. And then last, for those of you who are hikers, just like clean the water first, I guess. I don't know another way to put that. Like
The water that you get from...
the streams if you're hiking.
Oh, for sure.
Because I think something we've noticed is sometimes you'll come across a beautiful babbling brook and you don't realize that had you just walked up, 20 feet up the brook, there is a oven or like a couple of tires or something like that that somebody dumped there.
Or a big problem here, at least to my mind, is factory runoff
Yes.
that really needs to be fixed.
Not here, but yes. I mean, not where we are specifically.
Not in our town, but there's a river that runs through the valley where we live, and there are some factories and things that are probably dumping things in the river that they should not be. So
I was just thinking too, though, but specifically for hikers who are like up around, they know. I mean, if you're all hikers, y'all probably know this. But I was just thinking, even when something looks really pristine, it doesn't mean there hasn't been illegal dumping. And a lot of people tend to dump in a stream rather than like not in a stream. So things can end up.
Butts.
Yeah. So things can absolutely end up in the water, but even sometimes there'll be like little wells that are used for animals specifically to like drink from. They'll turn like a spring into like a little trough.
It kind of looks like a heavenly bathtub. There's one up on the mountain near us, and I just really want to take a bath.
Well, it has a great view. It's really beautiful, and it's technically potable. We've never had any problems with it. There's a little sign that does say potable, but it's also one of those ones that like it does. I don't think it's piped in. I think it comes from a spring, so it's a little iffy in terms of like if the water is ever contaminated, then you're just a bit out of luck.
Right.
So I think that's everything.
Oh. One quick thing, it's not about Italy. It's just that in my research about water in Italy, I found many forums like TripAdvisor and such where people say, or people are asking, like, is the water drinkable in this place? And people will suggest, just try a little bit and then you'll know. If it tastes bad, don't drink it. That is very bad advice.
That sounds terrible.
If you are going to a place where you are worried about the water, ask someone what's drinkable and not. Do not try water that you think may be contaminated. It can make you very, very sick if it happens to be contaminated.
Yeah, and sometimes it could be contaminated and taste fine.
Yes.
Like, that's a terrible piece of advice.
So don't just do the taste and see check.
But also, conversely, sometimes tap water tastes awful, but it's like safe to drink. It just tastes kind of nasty. So that's an awful piece of advice, I think. I mean, I'm completely uninformed.
Just a warning. Water can make you sick sometimes, but not in Italy. You'll be fine.
It's like, don't trust TripAdvisor. I'm kidding. I don't have anything against TripAdvisor. So with that being said, thank you for coming to this first part on tap water. We shall now be tiptoeing over to tipping.
Yeah, I like
that.
Know.
That worked, yeah.
Tippy taps.
Tippy taps.
Tips and taps.
There we go. Beautiful. Taps and tips, if you will.
From the taps to the tips. Okay. So, tipping. Should we do the question thing again? I'll ask you a question and then you answer. Nathaniel, should I tip in Italy?
Absolutely not. Please don't. Please don't.
Yeah, that's not a thing here.
So we wanted to put this in here because you had a great question when we were in Venice. And we didn't take a gondola that was one of the private 90 euros for whatever it was, and a little tour. We
only took the €2 gondola.
The gondola bus
episode. Yeah.
Yes. And it's a lot of fun. And it's the same thing. You're sitting in a gondola, but it's for a short trip across the Grand Canal instead of a long trip in some smaller canals. But we looked it up afterwards because we're like, maybe, is there something you're supposed to tip these gondola people? Like the gondoliers, they're called gondoliers. Because we weren't sure, because like tipping is not a thing. It is not a thing in Italy. I'm going to repeat that a bunch over this part, but it's very much not a thing. And we'll get into it in a second. But we looked it up, and there's a lot of these different websites were saying, tipping's not really a thing in Italy, but if you wanted to tip, like a good 10 to 20% tip is a fine thing to leave. And I'm like, it is not. And with the gondoliers, it's a little bit hard to figure out how much they make because everybody, including the gondolier company, says you can make up to $150,000 a year, which makes me think it's one person makes $150,000 a year. Everyone else does not, which, to be fair, even 60 a year is pretty good outside of Venice. I'm assuming no one actually lives in Venice who's a gondolier because that would be insane given the rent prices.
Yeah, I don't know.
But it might be. So part of the reason I also wanted to do this part and make it into some sort of mini-sode or part of an episode like we are today is because of the prevalence in tipping in the United States.
And it's getting worse. I'm sure if you're listening from the US, you have noticed.
Or if you visited recently and you're like, I thought it was just at restaurants, but it's like everywhere people are asking me to tip. And it is, and it's like absolutely everywhere. And I think even when we visit, it seems like it used to be one or two places, like not one or two places, like the restaurants and then obviously cafes and stuff. But it was like, it now seems like everywhere you're encouraged to leave a tip or gratuity, or like on sometimes online purchases or something, whatever. It's just like, what? Not even like, I'm not talking like food delivery. I'm just talking about like, I bought this online. Who am I leaving a tip for? Like, so this all being said, we wanted to talk about that because one, tipping is very much not part of the culture in Italy. I would argue, in fact, that Italy is coming out of, and it's pretty much completely out of, the bargaining culture, for lack of a better word. And sometimes, and as we saw last week, it does not stop people from bargaining. There's
goodness.
Lovely woman who sells fruits and vegetables that she grows nearby us. And when she comes to the market on Friday, she will sell them for a very fair price. And she happened to be selling cabbages for €1.50 for a cabbage head, which is not a bad price at all. I mean, I could see this other woman came up and she was a little bit unhappy with the price because they were a little light. So she offered 50 cents for a cabbage head instead of the 150.
And it was her and her husband, and the husband was being more aggressive. He was being what I would call insulting. He's like, no, that's worth 50 cents at the most, which is not a nice thing to say.
Especially, and once they ended up leaving, obviously they did not buy the cabbages. And our friend was telling us, she was basically like, I spent like 3 months growing these cabbages. I'm asking for €1.50, which again, last time we were at the grocery store in the United States, you can get a non-local, non-organic cabbage for roughly, I want to say like 69 cents a pound, but it ends up being about $4 when you, $4 or $5 when you weigh it. So I was like, $1.50 is not bad for something that's both local, organic, which I only say that because it does make things more expensive because you do lose a lot of crops to bugs or to whatever it is. So I'm like, that's a pretty fair price to be asking, especially because even if she sold everything that was there, she wouldn't make more than €40. I mean, if she sold all of her cabbages and all of her broccoli and all of her everything, I'm like, it may be €40.
Yeah, so she really does not make very much. We buy bags from her. Like, we try to buy a lot from her because we like her and because her vegetables are great. And we always spend less than €10 and walk away with at least one giant bag of various types of vegetables, like a week's worth almost of vegetables. And I have to say that I know that there are a couple of obviously supermarkets down below us. So I think people expect supermarket prices from local growers, and it's
just impossible.
Yeah.
And the reason I say that is because it is, again, a lot of people, I know, like on Reddit, it used to be a much more common question than it is now, but it still pops up occasionally, is how much can I barter or bargain for something? And a lot of people are like, none, zero
that's
amount.
not nice anymore.
Please don't do that. And I mean, there might be maybe places in which you can do that, but like, I can't think of anything off the top of my head right now. And I'm not even sure what they would be, honestly. Like,
a lot of people have asked us. So there's one great, I should say, market nearby us with used clothes and things. And there are several in Rome. Rome is a great place for them. Anyways, several people have asked us, like, so I can barter for things here.
Or bargain, I guess. Maybe
or bargain, yes. No. You ask the price of that item, and that is the price of the item.
Yeah. Sometimes, again, it's like, it'll be a self-imposed thing. Like, they'll be like, if you get $23 worth of clothing, I'll give you a €3 discount.
Right.
But you can't hold up a shirt that's on the €7 table and be like, will you take 5 for this? Because they're like, no, I'll take 7 for it though. So it's a little bit, it's very much changing. And even I say that sometimes because we have met people who, especially at the markets, who will be like, whether it's a cowbell or whether it's like something kind of more handmade, or basket, like a woven basket, and they're charging, let's say, 20 for it. They'll be like, well, could you do 10 for it? And it's like, no, I can't do 10 for it. 20 is not enough for it. So all that being said is, I think Italy is coming out of that culture, and because it's still, sometimes you can kind of see evidence of it. So the tipping thing is quite strange, but also it's just never been a European thing, never been an Italian thing. And in a lot of cases, like in the States where you might tip, obviously waiters is a very popular one. You tip because they make $2.15 an hour, at least they do in most states. That makes sense because the whole system is designed that, a restaurant owner doesn't have to pay the waiter because the tables will pay the waiter. But in Italy, it typically works that everybody gets paid a wage, and it's a fair wage, and they can live there, and then you don't tip on top of it. I will say, something to be aware of is that sometimes in cities like Rome, it's not uncommon to hear of a restaurant hiring people under the table and saying, I'm not going to pay you, or I'll pay you very, very little, but what you do is you get tips. So if you bring people in and you wait on them, get them to leave you a tip. And that's where I think the system becomes quite...
That's very messed up and very illegal.
Yeah, no, 100%.
Just
but
to be
also,
clear.
and I think that's how these things do become more prevalent, because it's obviously people, tourists like us, like our dear listeners, who think, oh, I'm doing the right thing. I'm helping this person out. I'm going to give them a tip. But
course.
it slowly kind of turns into, well, when are you not doing that all of a sudden? And it becomes expected, because I also say, as a person who worked in the waiting industry in the States, and it's like the thing, is that nobody from Europe tips. No one. It's just the thing. You get a table from Europe and you're like, oh God, this is just going to be a waste of time. And it is. They never tip, and that was it. And you're like, okay, that was fun. We used to have my hour and a half. So I'm like, don't come here and tip. No. They don't get tips. They don't tip when they go to the States. But I think part of it is genuinely there's a bit of a fear in America right now. It seems like how far will tipping culture go? I know some restaurants are trying to be like, no, we're actually going to pay our wait staff fairly, so don't tip at all. I know some like cafes are doing that because they're like, it's a little easier, I feel like, to do that at a cafe, where most people at a cafe, I don't know, I've never worked at a cafe in a place that got part of the tips. I've been a dishwasher at a cafe, but they all made more than minimum wage. So the tips were just on top of that, which is what always felt a little weird, because at least the cafes I've worked at, it's always been like, maybe you leave $1, maybe $2. But it seems now, like at least the last time we went, it was like, oh no, 22, 24, 26%. And it was like, but you gave me a cup, I got my coffee. Why am I tipping you?
Mm-hmm. And just to be fair, we are both coming from places of, we believe that everybody should be paid a fair wage
100%.
and be able to live. We come from in Savannah. A lot of people don't make enough to live. They should be paid more. And if that means, like for wait staff, if a hamburger is more expensive because the person is getting a fair wage, I think that's okay. I already cannot afford a hamburger.
Right.
but that's my fundamental belief.
It's also, I think it's one of those things that even here, when you know that the person is being paid more than minimum, because Italy does not have a minimum wage necessarily, in the sense of unions set their own wage for that type of work. So there isn't, I don't believe, we've looked into it 1,000 times. There's no federal minimum wage. And in fact, we talked about in one of the previous episodes on living here, if you make less than, I think it's 9,000 euros a year, you don't even have to file taxes, because they're like, you didn't make anything. Mm-hmm. Unlike the States, where I think you make more than $150 a year, you have to file taxes. So it's a little bit different in terms of, and not to say it's like everybody here makes a living wage and they're all very happy. Obviously they do not. There's a lot of people who work under the table who don't get paid a living wage. There's a lot of, I think a lot of times, like even the wages that people get paid, we talked about this before, part of the thing that's factored in is an assumption that you might be living at home, or some of your costs are covered by a family member, mm-hmm. which is not at all uncommon. In the place we live, everyone lives with family. So it's like, you have like your grandmother's, what is that little money you get at the beginning?
The pension?
The pension. Thank you. I was like, it's not, I was trying to think of like something else for some reason, but she might be chipping in for food, and you have like 2 or 3 other people chipping in for this and for that. And then the house is already paid off. So it's kind of like when you only make, let's say, 17,000 a year in Italy, you might be saving 12,000 a year in Italy, So it's a little bit different than the States, where 17,000 in the States is, unlivable.
Yes, that's poverty.
Yeah.
Line, right?
Yeah, that's far below the poverty. I think that's far below the poverty line.
Mm-hmm.
So that being said, I know I'm so worked up about this. It's ridiculous, but it is. I think that's a fear of, like, I know I have the same fear I think a lot of Italians have, are people coming here and bringing things like tipping culture, which a lot of Italians are quite steadfast. Like, please don't do that. Like, we already don't. Because things are fairly priced, and things go up in price when the original source goes up in price. Like,
right.
Our bread gets more expensive when the grain gets more expensive. So there really isn't anything to tip on. Sometimes, there will be an encouragement that is silent, I would say, to like tip the person who brings like your bags to the room. Yes, okay, that might be fine, I think, because that would, I've never been to such a nice hotel in which a porter has brought my bags to the room. I don't know the how to work there. How it works, but I think by and large, because I went to these like articles that people are talking about tipping, and they're like, if you feel like you want to tip, a nice 10 or 20% tip is fine. And I thought, I was like, that's a lot of money at the end of a trip on a trip where you're not supposed to be tipping at all.
Mm-hmm.
If that makes sense.
But it's also not very much when if you're at dinner.
Mm-hmm.
And all you spend on dinner, because sometimes you can get wonderful food here for 30 or 40 euros for two people, including wine, including multiple plates, and you're leaving a 20% tip. That's not that much money in that person's pocket. It's kind of to me, sometimes it can feel like I'm pitying that person. Like, here's €2, spend it wisely.
Yeah, I'm sorry you had to work here. Oof.
Yeah, and it's like that person probably likes their job, hopefully, and is hopefully getting paid a fair wage, because that's how the system is supposed to work. So it can feel weird, especially when you're coming from the States and you're only here for a couple weeks and you're not used to not tipping. I completely understand feeling bad, but the system is supposed to work such that these people are paid a fair wage in order to be able to live in the city where they're working. Exactly.
And actually, on that note, I do want to throw in the fact that at restaurants, there's something called the coperta, Coperta. It is tacked onto every single bill that you will ever have at a restaurant. It ranges anywhere between €1 and €5. It's more expensive the more expensive restaurant you're at. But essentially, it's
a cover charge.
It's a cover charge. And whether that includes the linens, some people say it's the dishwashing fee. Some people say it's the fee for the bread and everything else. It's essentially, it can be thought of as the tip, and it's done per person. So usually, we go to places, it's like €3. That's a pretty standard amount.
Per person?
Per person. Mm-hmm. €1 is quite low. So when we go out, like just the two of us, it's already €6 on a bill that is just going to either the restaurant or to
miscellaneous
costs. Exactly. So I think, which is, again, it's important to consider that, because you and I might get a plate of pasta each for €5, a bottle of wine for €5. That's 15, but then it becomes 21 when you tack on the coperta. So, which is more than I think that the 20% tip would have only been 3. They're making 6 instead. Mm-hmm. So it's something to consider, is that you aren't tipping necessarily, but you are paying for the miscellaneous services that are still being provided, mm-hmm. if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm. And one last note on this, I think we've talked about this several times, but waiting service is very different here than at least in the States. I think the States is pretty unique in the way that they make people or encourage people to wait on tables. I don't need to go into it. We all know how waiting works in the US. It's a lot of coming to check on you. It's a lot of chit chat. It's a lot of the waiter being at your table all the time.
Yeah.
In Italy, that is not the case. They are there for the bare minimum. They come to ask what you want and they leave.
And also, I think that's actually a good point on two notes. One, in the States, I would say the waiter works for the table, not necessarily the restaurant. Mm-hmm. So the waiter is sort of like I'll get you what you want, the best, whatever you want, I'm going to get it for you.
Because they have to make tips in order to survive.
Because you're paying them. Yeah.
Right.
And I think here it's the other way around. The waiter's like, no. I don't have to do anything for mm-hmm. you. I don't need anything you're giving me. You can leave today and I'd be very happy. You could not leave and I'd still be very happy. And on the other note was simply that it is a bit rude for a waiter to constantly come up and check on you.
Yes.
So don't ask necessarily for the waiter to come. Don't raise your hand and snap your fingers. That's a little weird. Like sometimes you'll see people do that, and I don't think anyone's ever really happy with it.
It's like a weird cartoon thing to do.
Yeah.
Like I feel like I've seen that in cartoons from like the 90s and before. Exactly.
It's a little, don't do that. The thing to do is just to try to catch your server's eye. Mm-hmm. So as they're going by with something like that, you're like, oh, and they're like, oh yeah, I'll come right back. And then that's, if you need another bottle of water or whatever it is. But sometimes too, they will let you know like that when they're first there, they'll be like, we're busy. If you want to order food, you order everything you want now. I'm not coming back 3 or 4 times to mm-hmm. get next orders. If you want dessert, put it in now. If you want everything, put it in now.
That's a good point. I don't know if we've ever said that. Typically the thing to do, sometimes Italians will order one sort of course at a time. Mm-hmm. That's pretty rare. Usually you will set up what you want. You decided all the courses that you want and order all at one time. So typically you and I will order a pasta dish each and a vegetable dish, a couple of vegetable dishes to share. Those are 2 different courses. And then we'll order, usually I guess dessert you can order at the end, but you tend to put in all of your orders at the same time when you get there. And then they'll bring them out as you should be eating them.
Right. And sometimes with the dessert, as you mentioned, it totally depends. And that's all to say simply too, like sometimes if you miss an opportunity, you miss the opportunity. it's not the end of the world. You will find other opportunities. But I realize I'm so worked up about this silly little thing. But I think because I worked as a waiter for a while, it was really cathartic, I think, to come here and see that like here there was no stress. I mean, the servers are stressed, obviously, but I mean, whether it's like the servers on their phone coming up to you like, yeah, you need something. Oh yeah, let me get you that. Okay, no worries. And I'm like, I love that. A complete and utter disregard for me. This is beautiful. I love this country.
Well, because you found being a waiter incredibly stressful because your livelihood always depended on the mood of your table, essentially.
And I think also there's
generosity.
And the generosity. There's also everything's out of your control in terms of like if the kitchen's backed up, there's nothing I can do. I cannot take food from another table and give it to you. If the kitchen got your order wrong, there's nothing I can do. I can ask them to remake it for you, but it's like just like cooking at home. Like they have to then take a meal from somebody else to give to you, make somebody else backed up. I'm like, there's so much in that's outside of my power. And I think here is respected. Like, yeah, I mean, there's been times they just straight up forget to bring us food entirely. And like, oh, you did order that. Do you still want that? Okay, I'll come. I'll bring. No. It'll give me like 10 minutes. I'll bring it out to you. And which again, I'm like, it's I don't know. It's a total shift. It's a completely different shift, but it really does. I don't almost feels more like you're eating at like maybe not a friend's house, but something more casual like that, where it's just somebody's like, oh yeah, you still good? You're fine. Okay, I'll be over here. I'm just gonna, I'm checking the soccer scores. Or I'm watching TikTok or whatever it is, and I'm not really gonna pay attention to you until you need something. So anyway, all that being said is, don't tip. There's no tipping culture, whether it's a gondolier, whether it's at a hotel, whether it's at a restaurant, cafe, especially cafe. 9 times out of 10 too at a cafe. 8 times out of 10 at a cafe, the person serving you the coffee owns the cafe. There's no I mean, sometimes there's a tip. There's like that little glass of water that you can put like a cent in or 5 cents in, but I don't know if that's tipping.
I don't even know what that's for. But
yeah, I think it's.
But also, just to reiterate, if you happen to get sucked into a restaurant, which target tourists, where they encourage you to tip, with like body language or verbally or anything like that. Or aggressively, which can apparently happen. That's never happened to us, but evidently that does happen. It is not your fault. You are not in the wrong for not tipping. They are in the wrong for making you feel like you have to tip, and some shady business is happening.
And if I may just throw it in, since you're already listening to this part, absolutely that. They might hit you with something like, it's illegal to not tip. It is not illegal to not tip. If you've paid, you're done. You can absolutely walk out. They might say stuff like, well, you can't pay with a card. You have to pay in cash and blah, blah, blah. You can pay with a card. You can pay with a card anywhere. I think Italy, by law, if you accept payments of any kind for any service, goods or service, you have to accept all forms of acceptable payment, which includes card. Of course, this does not get extended to your lovely vegetable and fruit lady who is a cash-only business. Yeah. But in Rome, everyone will take card. So that's just something. Yeah, if you feel like you're in a situation where they're like, oh no, you have to tip. We're going to call the cops. If you don't tip, you have to pay. You have to tip with the extra cat. That is all weird scare tactic things. You can just pay for your portion of the meal and walk out, and you're totally fine. They get in trouble, not you. So it's a big thing. Even the police are trying to crack down on. To be clear, like the police are trying to crack down on, especially illegal tipping, but because that means usually that person works there under the table. So the restaurant owner is trying not to pay taxes on them. They're trying not to pay them in general. They're trying to make a little more money. So I think that's everything for tipping.
Yeah. Let's move on.
Let's go into the much more toilets. I mean, let's splash into toilets, if you will. I hate that for me. So let's piddle into toilets. I don't know. What we have tiptoe into everything else.
Okay. So basically, prepare yourself for Italian bathrooms.
And I
public
think
bathrooms.
they're specifically public. And why do you think, Darcy? Can I ask the question? Why do you think we need to talk about public toilets in Italy?
Okay, because there are some essential. I love this country, but there are some essential needs that are not met in public toilets. And when we're saying public toilets, we've talked about, public toilets that are run by a city or the train station, and you have to pay €1 to use them. There are those, but also we're talking about toilets at coffee shops and restaurants, anywhere that regular people are going to use the bathroom.
Yes.
So essential needs that aren't met in a lot of these bathrooms: soap, paper towels, toilet paper, toilet seats.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's
basics for bathrooms that
starting
don't always
with
happen.
the toilet seat. It is strange, but it is a rarity to find a toilet seat on a toilet in a bathroom in a cafe or restaurant in Italy. We don't know for a fact, but a lot of people seem to think, that we've talked to at least, seem to think it's it's simply a cost, which I think is hilarious because your dad, who works as a handyman at a hotel now that he's retired, he's like, he's spent 30 years being an analyst. So he's like, I've never understood how many people could break toilet seats, but
It's like every week there's a broken toilet there.
he's constantly going to Home Depot, which
Not
is
broken like the tubes are
no, but like
broke,
somebody
the
smashed the
seat.
toilet seat.
Yes.
And he's like, how do you break are you standing on the toilet seat? Are you just slamming it down? He's like, I don't understand how you can break a toilet seat this much.
I think people take like a running jump to sit on the toilet.
And I think that must be like genuinely. So he's constantly replacing toilet seats. And I'm genuinely wondering if because a lot of cafes do operate on fairly thin margins. Like when you consider the fact that most cafes have to, like there's I think a maximum amount you're allowed to charge per coffee, especially when it's taken at the bar. So you can add a sitting fee on top of that, but you won't. That's not everywhere. It's only in like major cities, tourist sites, things like that. But you consider the fact that like it's where we are. I think it's 80 cents in our area. It's €1 in our region. You can't charge more than €1 for a coffee. So you have to basically consider the fact there's some pretty slim margins involved. So if you're going out every week to buy a 15, 20 euro toilet seat, especially if you're a really tiny cafe that only makes a couple €100 a month, it's like, oh, that's kind of cutting into the margins. But that is something to consider. There's no toilet seat. I don't understand it. So there's no comfortable sittings on toilets in Italy, in public bathrooms like cafes and restaurants specifically. Toilet paper?
I don't know why they don't have toilet paper. You need toilet paper. So if you're somebody who needs toilet paper when you go to a public bathroom, bring a little pack of tissues with you.
And on a fun note, in Italy, you can buy toilet paper, and instead of the center roll being just this empty little gap like you are like in America, it's just like there's this little hole and you put the toilet paper tube in there. They actually sell inside of them a smaller on-the-go toilet paper roll.
I love it.
So it seems like a lot of people just use that as like, oh, that's always in my bag. And it's it's fascinating because even Italians will come out from the bathroom and be like, oh my God, there's toilet paper, there's soap, there are paper towels. This bathroom is amazing. And like people remember that though. Like, I mean, we've been with people who go back to the same cafe over and over. They have the nicest bathroom. It's stocked and clean.
Yeah.
So we sound so ridiculous, I know, making this part of the episode, but it's such a weirdly big thing in Italy that when you step into a bathroom and it isn't just like a toilet bowl and a sink, when it's other stuff, you're like,
They do
this
have
is
running
fancy.
water.
Yes.
Speaking of tap water, there is water to rinse your hands if there is no soap. Not hygienic. I'm not
But
recommending it.
Close enough.
Bring some hand sanitizer
They don't
with
make you like dish around the back of the toilet tank or anything.
Right.
Which is nice.
That would be horrible.
Right? Well, it's also thinking cleanliness too in terms of washing. It could be easier to clean a toilet bowl that doesn't have a seat. You can just kind of spray down. Because some of these public toilets very much look like they step in there once a week with a pressure washer, clean the whole thing, and then step out. And they're like, well, I can't have paper towel and towels, but you can't be, no paper products allowed. So that's a consideration. I don't know that one for a fact though. But like there's something involved with it.
Yes.
Soap and then also and paper towels. Sometimes there will be a paper towel dispenser that has one cloth,
The one continuous infinity.
piece of cloth.
Yes.
I don't understand it. It doesn't seem that hygienic. It's supposed to dry, I guess, when it goes back into the machine. It never does.
I think it's supposed to be sanitized and dried in the machine, but
Yeah.
I've encountered one in my life where that worked, but I don't remember where
It seems
we
like
were.
it's big in the men's bathroom. It's been a few times in the men's bathroom that I'll see it. And I don't know if it's just like, they're like, well, men aren't washing their hands anyway. Or if like, I don't know what it is.
I'm making a face. You guys can't see it.
I think the sigh was enough.
Yeah. Wash your hands, y'all.
I know. It's amazing. Like it's both with that, but also with even like the train bathrooms. Because sometimes it's like there's a line outside the train's bathrooms, and it's like every time after a guy, I'm like, you didn't flush, you didn't wash your hand, you did nothing, you just.
The amount of times that I see,
trough.
yes, the amount of times that I see, I think it's usually in trains that it's not flushed. I'm like, I know it takes a little bit more time because the button's in a weird spot, usually in a train. Sometimes it's on the floor, it's a pedal, sometimes it's on the wall. The toilet flushes.
Yeah.
If you see a toilet, it probably will flush.
We could have just called this like the things that irk us episode. Between the tap water Instagram video for you, the tipping for me, this ridiculous toilet
My
behavior.
goodness.
On that note that you mentioned pedals, Something to be aware of, and I think we've only overheard it once, maybe once, where somebody basically came out and said there's no like way to turn on the water, and we went in and realized like no, there is. It's just there are pedals on the floor that make the water run.
Yes.
It's like, I guess you can wash your hands without using your hands.
Without touching anything? I like that.
Which is really cool. No, it's a fact.
But it is confusing if you've never seen it before.
If you've never seen it before and you're not sure what the pedals do, you might not want to.
It's kind of like a long piano pedal
Yeah.
sticking out underneath
Exactly.
the sink.
That's exactly what it's like. And I think I'm thinking like a lot of these tips are like, if you don't know what to do, you don't necessarily want to go clicking and twisting random things in the bathroom and like, oh. And on that note, Darcy.
So in almost every Italian bathroom is a little cord that dangles along the wall. It like comes from like a high placed light switch sort of situation with a little string that comes down and a little toggle at the end. That is an emergency alarm for if you are having some sort of medical emergency in the bathroom.
Or you've fallen, I imagine.
Right. I would consider that a medical emergency.
That's a good point. Okay. fair
Maybe,
enough.
maybe not. If you've fallen, if you need assistance, that will call someone to come help
Sometimes
you.
it turns a light on the outside of the bathroom, which is even less useful.
Yeah. Like a little red light.
Yeah. Like this person needs help. And I'm like, yeah, but no one's looking to see if that light goes on
Right.
ever.
But it does not flush the toilet. It is often near the toilet, and it can look like one of those old-fashioned.
Yeah. Pull to flush. ones.
Yeah, exactly. That's not what this is. It is for emergencies.
My favorite thing, though, is when the alarm's attached to an actual sound alarm,
Mm-hmm.
because it happens so frequently. There was one cafe we went into, and like 3 or 4 people would go in, and all of a sudden you hear the alarm, and they come out looking so ashamed that they like pulled the alarm cord and not the little press button. And I will say, some of these bathrooms do have a giant sign that says, "This is where you flush. That is an alarm. Only
Yeah.
pull for emergencies." Not all bathrooms. Some bathrooms don't even have like a button for where to flush. Which does bring me to the note, just sometimes you have to look around for the buttons to flush. Sometimes it's on the toilet, sometimes it's on the wall. And if it's a wheelchair proof bathroom, like there's no ADA, I think, in Italy, so I'm not sure what there is, but it's sometimes it's in a weird spot somewhere else, like kind of I guess normally would be waist level for a lot of people, but it's not near, it's almost like not near the toilet sometimes. You have to kind of go hunting for it on a different part of the wall. So that all to say is sometimes you never know what you get yourself into with an Italian bathroom. And I never understand. Sometimes there's showers in the bathroom. That's not for you. It's just, they didn't know what they were going to do with the place when they rented it out or when they sold it.
You know what I was thinking about the other day? Some public bathrooms have a bidet.
Yeah, I'm not sure who's supposed to be using that.
I did this. This might be too much information. Just you
Hit
can
me
skip
with it.
ahead if you need to. I don't poop in public bathrooms. I understand that some people do because they don't have a problem with it. Some people do because it's an emergency. I totally get it. And
I feel like kids also have no concept
kids.
of like,
No, kids, definitely. Kids have to, they just got to do what they got to do wherever it happens.
there's no
for
warning.
Sure.
They're just like, all right.
No, totally get that. But, and I appreciate that there is a place to wash yourself off after you've pooped in a public bathroom. However, it seems weird. Like, that's something that needs to be sanitized a lot because you got poop
like-
water flying everywhere.
Yeah. And I don't think they do sanitize it very
No.
frequently.
So
people who listen to this are just like, I don't know why I followed this podcast.
yeah, so
but
I
this
just
is what
wanted to
you do.
share my musings about
But I think
public
also it's something
bidets.
actually, I'm almost happy you brought that up because that's not just weird for you. That's weird for a lot of the people we've talked to.
Okay.
That is not like, oh, you're in Italy now. When you use the bathroom in public, you should wash off afterwards.
Yeah.
No one does that.
No.
That's not a thing. At home, yes, you should. In public, everyone's like, that's not ever going to be used, I hope. That shouldn't be touched. And it's the same thing with the shower. That's not for the group. That's at all. That's not like you're not supposed to step into the shower and have a rinse off and then
Yeah.
go back to having your coffee. That's because they were going to rent out the place as like a studio apartment or something. So they put in everything they needed to put in. And then somebody's like, I want to make a cafe. They're like, fine, there's a shower in the bathroom. Like, that's okay. We won't use it. That happens with some frequency as well. I don't understand it. There's a pizza place we went to once. They had a shower in the bathroom. I was like, all right, everything flies here. On that note, it's actually not related at all. I did want to mention too that Italy is not as, I don't know the word. Bathrooms seem to be a big thing in America politically right now and have been for the last 10 years.
Yes.
Italy, like most of Europe, I would say, at least most of Europe I've been to, which is Germany, France, Italy, and Iceland. That's really count. But by and large, there's not a lot of separation when it comes to bathrooms. There's not like
Like gender separation.
Yeah, there's not like a men and like a lot of places typically don't have a men and women's bathroom. They'll have the bathroom if it's just one or a couple of bathrooms, but almost I would say a large portion of them. If it's not a one bathroom, because a lot of cafes have one bathroom. There's
right.
not like
It's just for everybody.
yeah, there's just the bathroom.
It's the water closet.
Yes.
Yeah.
And sometimes too, keep in mind that if you're in, it'll be two separate rooms. You go in and there's the sink room, and then you go through another door and you're in the toilet room. You might find that only the toilet room door locks,
Right.
not the sink room door, which means people will come in there to wash their hands and then go back, leaving you in the toilet alone by yourself, unless you want company, I guess. I don't know. But that's something to keep in mind too, is it's really common in bathrooms for it to be like you step through the door into like, not a waiting area, it's the sink room where there's just the sink and the toilet paper and paper towels or whatever it is, ideally, and soap, hopefully. And then there are one or two other doors leading to toilets. And it's not, again, uncommon for like everyone just waits in the sink room.
It's common to have like a communal sort of sink room, and then they're not even stalls. It's like
Just the
closets.
toilet.
Yeah, it's like a toilets in closets that can be used by anybody, and those doors do lock, but if you need them to. But the sink room is just shared by everybody, you know. So there's often not separation by like the little person with the little dress on, little person with the pants on.
Yeah.
You don't have to choose one of those usually.
Well, it's also, I think too, there's not as like much of, I don't know, it's like for such a weirdly, I would not conservative again in a political sense, conservative more in a social sense, like country, they're really not that weird about the like it's not like for instance, a lot of men's bathrooms, if there are men's bathrooms, will be like, it's like there's no doors, so it's like, oh yeah, there's the toilet, the urinal right next to the toilet, and it's like, choose one. I'm like,
the toilet one doesn't have a door on it?
sometimes it doesn't have a door on it, so I'm kind of like, what?
Oh, I go to the women's bathrooms and they always have doors.
Yeah, so I'm like, sometimes if there is separation, even within the bathroom, it isn't. But even sometimes when there's just the,
I'm sorry, they just expect you to poop with no door?
I think they're
in
hoping
public?
you don't. Like, this is a cafe. What are you doing? Please don't. You can go home, sir.
I mean, I would choose to go home, but yeah.
I don't, but also I think there's been a few bathrooms where I've gone into the sink room and there's the door to the toilet room has just been open and the guy's just standing there peeing. And it's like me and a bunch of other people, men and women or whatever, are just waiting for him to get done peeing so we can go in. And it seems like not everybody feels the need to close the door behind them, which is all to say, I think from the States, there's this thing of like, no, when I go to the bathroom, it's my bathroom, whether it's my stall or whether it's like the entire bathroom is for me. And in Italy, it's very much not like that. I think it's very much like, well, I'm going to come in and wash my hands. Like,
Right.
Can I please? Like, you can't just lock me out. So I wanted to throw that out there for people who are, it can feel maybe not aggressive. It can feel very surprising the first time.
But that also happens with Italians too. There was one instance we were at a restaurant and it had the behind one door was a sink and then the further door was the toilet. And I was coming out, I think, from washing my hands, and a guy went, "Oh, I'm so sorry," and I was like, "No, it's fine. It's one bathroom. I was just washing my hands. It's all good."
But you can't lock that door, yeah.
Right. He assumed it was a women's bathroom because I was in there, and I look like a woman because I am. Anyways,
Glad we tied that one up. That's really good.
so yes, it can be confusing and sort of stunning when you see people who present as men and people who present as women in a communal sink space, and you might not know what to do.
Yeah. And I think that's just something to, I guess, and I think it's something we warned your mom about too, because it's like sometimes it's not that it's just, but like, yeah, you'll go wait for the bathroom and then a guy comes out, you're not in the wrong bathroom. It's
Right.
just the bathroom. So something else just to kind of keep in mind.
Yeah,
Is that everything about toilets?
I think so.
It's like sometimes they're hard to find if they're public. They'll be like, it's down a flight of stairs, it's up this.
Oh
talk to
goodness,
the
yes.
gatekeeper,
So sometimes, yes.
cross his
talk to the
palm with
gatekeeper.
silver, the whole thing.
So especially, I don't know if it's especially in the South, but I feel like we've seen it a lot in like Salerno because the building has been chopped up in sort of
Yeah.
an odd way that you have to go like down the stairs across several rooms that
Yeah.
like are dark and you have to turn on the lights. And then finally you'll find a random closet somewhere
And that's the bathroom.
and that's the bathroom. And sometimes like and I'll go to the bathroom first and I have to warn you that like, oh, you have to duck down to 4 feet tall at this point and then go around 3 right turns and then you'll find
Yeah.
the bathroom.
Yeah, it's a little weird. I mean, but they're fine. And also, as we mentioned in the last episode, a couple episodes ago, it's not illegal to pee in public. So if it's an emergency, you can. Again, public toilets are related to that. But there are toilets around if need be. Don't just like maybe if you're going to find an alley or something, I don't know.
Yeah. Do your best to be polite.
Yeah, I think that's what it all comes down to. So I think that's everything, which is just a funky episode.
I thought it was fun.
This is
I
exciting.
enjoyed it.
Yes, we've talked about the 3 important T's of traveling. I forgot for tap water, tipping, and toilets.
Yeah.
And I think that is generally everything. The only other thing I want to put in is sometimes, very rarely, some bathrooms will not have a lock on it. It's the only other thing I can think about at all. And what they will have is a system where the door is closed and a light goes on outside, like the one in Rome. Sometimes bathrooms are like this when if somebody has been caught using drugs in the bathroom and they try to, or not caught using drugs, specifically passed out or overdosed in the bathroom,
Right.
they'll try to be like, okay, so we're not going to have that again. No more locking the door. And that's incredibly rare, but it is like sometimes you'll see that at cafes or you'll see it at bars. It seems a little bit more common when it's like, I don't know, it seems more common at bars, I think, than anything else. It just seems like, oh, that's what that's for. But besides that, it's also, I think the last other thing I was going to mention is that we've talked about in the Rome episode that we were operating under this assumption that there's some sort of law like you have to be allowed to use the bathroom somewhere, because we've gone in like any place in Rome, nice restaurant, cafe that we didn't buy anything at, anything, and we're like, I'm so sorry, can I use the bathroom? And like, of course you can use the bathroom, it's right down there, just go blah blah blah, and there's no problem. And when we looked into it, there's no law actually saying that. It doesn't seem at all a thing. And in fact, we thought then, okay, but there must be a law, like you have to have a bathroom for people. But that's also not a law. Because again, in Rome is also, we found some of those really crazy, like, we have a bathroom, it's just down the street, here's the key, whatever it is, tell the guy that you're there to use the bathroom, he's fine with it.
Yeah.
It's like somebody's apartment bathroom or whatever it is. And then we looked into that, and that's not a rule. That's not a law either.
So people were just nice.
I think people were just really, Rome has been, it's so silly, but I think, again, it's one of those silly, we talked about this in the tip episode, tipping, like not to tipping, but travel tips last episode. Traveling with a full stomach is really important in terms of like, you enjoy things around you more when you're not worried about it. But I think same thing if you have to pee really bad or anything like that.
Oh, it's the
There's
worst.
like nothing else in your mind. You're just like, I am going to burst in a minute. And I think that for me is like one of those big things where, and especially when you're traveling with a group, it's kind of, because it can really change the group dynamic quite a bit when somebody's like, I have an incredibly pressing need that nobody else seems to be taking seriously. So I'm always like, okay, we're going to find you a bathroom. We're going to get you in somewhere. But it seems like people are just super nice about it. Everyone's like, yeah, you need to pee. Just don't like, I don't know, destroy our bathroom while you're in there, please. So I think that's everything though. Yeah.
Yeah, I think so.
Well, all right then. This has been the 3 T's with Darcy. I'm trying to make it.
Trying to find some T's in our names.
Yeah. Nathaniel. Yeah, it doesn't work.
It didn't work. But that's who we are. We're Darcy and Nathaniel. And we've told you the 3 T's.
Yes. So I hope there's some takeaways there for you.
Some takeaways.
Beautiful. Incredible.
Great.
And you haven't learned too much information about Darcy, and that you will continue to love us and listen to our podcast as we will put out more exciting episodes. Thank you all so much for listening, and we hope to have you back for the next one.
Absolutely. Tanti abbracci.